Shares opened down. They've pared most of their losses for the day, but they're still down 30% so far this year. What do you think investors are missing?
I think there's a lot of uncertainty on travel right now, and but I think the best thing we can do is just continue to tell our story. Our revenue was up 58% year over year. We generated 800 million of free cash flow in the quarter, nearly $3 billion in the last year. And I think one of the things we shared with investors is that our bookings actually accelerated from June to July. So I think one of the things we saw is that there's a lot of demand for Q3, Q4 summer travel, and we're focused on things we can control. So that's what we're doing.
Still, there's some disappointment about your forecast. Still going to grow, but growing the same rate as last quarter. We had Brent Thill, who covers Airbnb from Jefferies, on saying, look, I might be the perfect example of a person. I just took a big trip. Now I'm back home. Maybe I'm going to slow my spending down, slow my travel down just because of what's happening in the macro environment. How concerned are you about that?
We're not too concerned right now about the macro environment. One of the things we learned was 2 years ago, we experienced something that we think is going to be much worse than this current macroeconomic environment. When the pandemic hit, our business dropped 80% in 8 weeks. But the thing that was remarkable is what happened next. We recovered really faster than any other travel company. And that's because our model is adaptable. We have nearly every type of space and nearly every type of community. So whatever happens to the economy, people, I think, are still going to want to live on Airbnb. They're still going to want to travel. If they want to save money, Airbnb is a great way to do that. And, we're great for crossing borders. We're great with urban travel, but we also are great for non-urban destinations. So if you want to get in a car and travel nearby, we work for that as well. So I think we're a very adaptable model. And in a difficult economic time, what I remind people is we're actually born in a recession. During that period of time, during the financial crisis, people turned to Airbnb to become hosts. People wanted to save money and seek the value that they got from Airbnb. So we're actually feeling really positive right now.
So Dara Khosrowshahi, I spoke to him yesterday, the CEO of Uber. He said he thinks Uber is, quote, recession resistant. Is that how you describe Airbnb? Are you recession proof?
We were born in a recession. We dealt with a pandemic where we lost 80% of our business in 8 weeks. We just established that we had a record Q2, and we're feeling really good about Q3. So I think we are as well positioned as anybody for a recession if that were to happen.
Obviously, we've been talking a lot about the companies doing layoffs, big tech companies like Netflix, Shopify, Coinbase. We're just hearing Walmart doing layoffs. I spoke to Tim Cook just ahead of their earnings call. Apple planning to slow down spending on hiring and growth. Also said Apple plans to be deliberate about its spending. Are you changing your spending or investing or hiring strategy at all, given the downturn? What's your approach?
Absolutely not. We are not pulling on the brakes. If anything, I'd be interested in stepping on the gas. And here's why. Because we've been through this movie before. 2 years ago, we had to right-size our business. We made a lot of difficult choices. We got really focused. That's why we went from a company that had negative free cash flow to now positive $3 billion last year. So we are not changing our hiring plans. We are not changing any investment thesis. We are staying really focused, and we've sustained our discipline. We were disciplined over the last couple of years when we right-sized our business, and we are staying disciplined. We're staying focused. And actually, what we're focused on right now is next travel season. We are focused on how can we step on the gas to be prepared for the next travel season.
All right, so what's going to happen next travel season? It's clear from your results that urban and cross-border travel are back. What are the locations, the destinations that are going to be most popular?
Well, I think it's going to be, I thought last year was going to be the travel rebound of the century, and it nearly was. But then, of course, we had the pandemic bounce back with Delta strain. This was an even bigger year. That's why this was a record quarter for us. Remember, this is before Asia's recovered. A large percent of travel is Asia Pacific. That is not recovered because much of Asia Pacific is cross-border and people aren't freely crossing borders yet. Also, urban and cross-border more generally is just beginning to recover. Now, cross-border is double what it was this time last year. But I think that everything is going to continue to recover. Obviously, notwithstanding whatever happens to the economy, I think it's going to be an even bigger travel season next year.
Now, Airbnb closed shop in China at the end of July because it was just so tough to do business there given the zero COVID policy. But you're now focusing on outbound China travel. Do you have any expectation of when restrictions will ease and when that will open up?
No, I don't. I mean, we're not going to try to be in the business of predicting when countries are going to reopen, but we're going to be in the business of being the most prepared whenever they do. So we'll be ready whenever borders reopen. And to be clear, the China outbound business was always the prize. The biggest prize was the Chinese consumer base wanting to travel around the world and stay in homes. That's not really, that's not really a robust business right now because people aren't really crossing the border. But when they are, we're going to be ready. And the way we're preparing is we're making sure we have enough homes in all the corridors. So whether it's Japan, Korea, Southeast Asia, or the other places that Chinese travelers go, we're going to be prepared to have enough homes. We're going to market them that this is a great option for them.
How much more pricing power do you think hosts can have in this market? I mean, this is the worst inflationary environment that, Airbnb has ever seen.
Well, I think that our business is a somewhat seasonal business. So right now it's peak booking windows. So a lot of people are traveling right now. And so because a lot of people are traveling right now, prices will tend to go up a little bit. Now, bookings right now in August are typically for September on. September on is really after the peak travel season. And so that will provide some pricing relief, presumably. So I do think there's going to be quite a bit of flex entering the system as we kind of go off of high season.
There also seems to be a trend in companies buying up short-term rentals in bulk. And I wonder if that makes you at all concerned about inventory.
And what do you mean by that? I just make sure I understand the question.
Well, you've got these property companies, these property managers that are buying up short-term rentals in bulk, which I wonder if that could be more competition for Airbnb or make inventory growth more difficult.
I think that, like, for the most part, I think it's just good to remember the scale that Airbnb operates in. We have 4 million hosts. We have 6 million listings around the world, hundreds of millions of guests. So I think the scale of Airbnb is critical. And I think that ultimately what hosts decide is they usually want to go to the platform where they get the most demand. And they always typically want incremental demand. And Airbnb has probably more demand for homes than any other platform in the world. So I think that we're still going to be the place for people to go. This is the category that we created, and it's going to be something that I think can stay really strong.
Airbnb employees might be driving some of that demand. I know, obviously earlier this year, and you announced that Airbnb employees could live and work from anywhere. And I'm so curious the learnings from this policy so far. What's been great? What's been more challenging? Anything that you think needs to be tweaked?
Yeah, it's been a really great experiment so far. I mean, what we announced is that employees can live and work anywhere. We won't change their pay if they move within the country, and we are going to make it easier for them to travel and work from up to 170 different countries. What we found is that, number one, the reaction was incredibly amazing. We've actually had hundreds of thousands of people visit our jobs page, so clearly people want this. I think it's going to open up access to tons of talent all over the world. We've begun to gather employees. Our guidance isn't to only be on Zoom. Our guidance is that we'd like people to be together at least a week a quarter. So what we're trying to do is balance the best of Zoom, the best of real world. And we don't think that's necessarily being in the office 3 days a week. We think that's less frequent, more meaningful engagements. What I've learned is it takes central planning. You don't want a free for all. Whether or not you bring people back to an office, you allow remote work, you want to have it centrally planned. Because if one team does an offsite, that can stop everything if they're collaborating with another team. So I think the key is being really organized, really disciplined. But if you do that, you don't need to be in an office to see people working to know they're getting their job done. You just need to be really organized. The more organized you are, the more flexibility you can offer.
I'm curious for your thoughts on Y Combinator. They're cutting back on the accelerator by some 40%. Obviously, Airbnb was an early Y Combinator company, maybe the biggest success in Y Combinator ever. Does that give you any concerns or pause about, let's say the next 6 to 12 months?
I mean, I think to put in perspective, I think Y Combinator said they're going to reduce the batch size to only fund 250 companies. When I was in Y Combinator, it was 17 companies. So just to put these things in perspective, the scale that Y Combinator operates off of is hard to fathom. I think they funded 4,000 companies to date. I'm not sure anyone has ever funded more companies. So it doesn't give me pause, because I think the scale of still funding 250 companies is such a profound scale. It's more than an order of magnitude greater than we were there. So I think that, I don't know why. I don't know the inner workings of all the details, but it does not give me pause.
Last quick question. I know you're back at your home in San Francisco, but you've been living on Airbnb for some time now. I know I've seen some pictures of you and your dog. Sophie, what have been your favorite destinations, and where are you off to next?
Well, like one of my favorite ones is Sophie and I went to Ann Arbor, Michigan, where we stayed in a Frank Lloyd Wright home. And who knew that Frank Lloyd Wright homes are on Airbnb? Well, we have actually an entire collection of them under our design category on Airbnb. So that was amazing. I'm actually going to Europe in a little over a week, so I'll be looking forward to staying in some really great Airbnbs as well. And I think I've stayed in like 12 to 13 different Airbnbs by my last count since the beginning of the year. So I've gone to like places all over the country, and it's really great. It turns out you can run a really large public company from a laptop in someone else's home.